Tonight we're going to speak about the dynamics of faith. What it is, what's our basis for it, and how do we make it more a part of who we are. But first, there's a story of a little boy. The little boy was 4 years old, goes over to his father and says, "Daddy, I have a question for you. Where do we come from? Where's our family come from?" Well, he says, "Well, sit right down here, little Johnny. I'll tell you. We came from the first family whose names were Adam and Eve. X amount of years ago, you had Adam and Eve, his wife, and then they had children, and they had children, until you have us here today, up until you, little Johnny." So he says, "Wow, that's so great." So the next day he goes to his mother. Says to his mother, "Mom, can you tell me where we come from? Where's our family from? Tell me where we come from." She says, "Well, it's very simple. Back millions of years ago, there was monkeys, and those monkeys had more monkeys, and eventually they became humans, and today, so we're the product of monkeys, basically." So the boy is very confused. So the following day he goes back to his father, and he says, "Dad, you told me that we were from Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, great thing. You know, Mom says that we came from monkeys. I don't get it. Which is it?" So the father says, "I was talking about my side of the family." The latest Gallup poll that I saw was taken from 2008. Says that a staggering 94% of the American people believe in God or some sort of higher power. That's a staggering number. In fact, throughout world history, the majority of people have believed in God or some sort of higher power, whatever they called it. I always thought it was interesting, just as a little side note, I always thought it was interesting how if we did kind of randomly get here, how the random mutations evolved everybody into the exact same mistake, all believing in God, that we didn't come from the random mutation. But that's a side thing. There's a phenomenon that takes place in the Jewish community as well. Even Jews who identify themselves as a non-believer or an atheist or whatever they call themselves, always have a glimmer of faith from time to time. How many Jews, even ones who the whole year reject religion, reject God, show up for the holidays, make a Passover Seder in their house, light Hanukkah candles? We see it time and again. Those Jews who sometimes make themselves like they're estranged, participating, that glimmer of faith shows itself in various scenarios. How many of those same people who don't believe in God say Kaddish for a loved one when they pass away, or at least light a yortzeit candle? Happens all the time. So some people might look at that in a disparaging way. Oh, look, their whole life they're not participating, and now all of a sudden something happens, they want to participate. We have to look at it in the opposite. You see, every single person has within them, deep down, buried within, there's always that spark of faith. Sometimes it just takes the right scenario to bring it out. Jews are naturally always apologizing for being Jewish, right? Ask a Hindu, "What religion are you?" Say, "I'm a Hindu." "Excuse me, are you a Muslim?" "Yes, I'm a Muslim." "Excuse me, are you Jewish?" "Well, I'm Jewish, but I don't practice, I don't believe, I'm not observant." Whatever, we have a whole story to tell. We tell a story of even the most rebellious Jew has a glimmer of faith. You still see that deep down, under all of his words, under all of his actions, there's still a glimmer of faith. The story is told of a guy sits down. Jews, no matter what they believe, are always very boisterous about what they believe. Sits down next to the rabbi. Rabbi, I just want to tell you I'm an atheist. I just want to tell you. Fine, okay. So he starts saying, in fact, I'm such a non-believer, I make a point to eat a ham sandwich on Yom Kippur. Every Yom Kippur I make a point to eat a ham sandwich. So the rabbi looks back to him and says, you know what, you're actually very religious. He said, what are you talking about? Didn't you hear me? Ham sandwich, Yom Kippur, they don't go together. So he says, well, if you really didn't believe, if you really did not believe at all, Yom Kippur wouldn't even mean anything to you. The fact that you make a point to do it on Yom Kippur shows that you acknowledge Yom Kippur means something and you're just rebelling against it. But you acknowledge that Yom Kippur means something. So even under all the rhetoric, there's still a tremendous amount of faith. In the human being, we are given different qualities. Our soul possesses different qualities. We have our faith, which is sort of superconsciousness. We have our intellect. We have our emotions. All are equal and legitimate soul powers. They're all legitimate, they're all good. But they each have a specific purpose. It's kind of like when you're doing a project, your building project. There's things that you need a hammer for, and there's things that you need a screwdriver for, or a wrench for. Try and screw in a screw with a hammer. You're not going to be so successful, because a hammer has its purpose. Try and nail in a nail with a wrench. I mean, maybe you'll get far, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work very well, because each tool has a particular purpose in which it was put there for, in which it was created for. So the same thing when we are working on our self project. Each part of the soul has its own particular purpose. And if we try and use parts of the soul that are not meant for that particular purpose, we get very misled. If a person just had something happen to them, so they're very emotional. So if you try and approach such a person with some intellectual ideas about why and how and this, the person doesn't want to hear it. They need a hug. The person at that moment needs a hug. They need an emotional response. They're expressing emotion. Their feelings are coming from emotion. They need an emotional response. If you try and give them an intellectual response, it's not going to work properly. Intelligence, intellect, is the most powerful tool that a human being has. Yet, it can overstep its bounds. It can overstep the job in which it was put here for. It can suppress emotions and can also quash faith. Sometimes a person says, how many times have you heard this? If I have absolute proof that God exists, then I'll believe in him. If I have absolute proof. Let me ask you something. Is there absolute proof for anything? Anything that we do in life, anything that we've ever done, is there absolute proof? We all rely on faith every single day. We rely on a lot of faith every single day. For example, everyone goes into airplanes. Okay, go into an airplane. Can you give 100% proof that that airplane is going to get where it needs to go? No. So why do you get in the airplane? Because, okay, based on an intellectually sound decision, you say, well, the airplane, I'm confident that it had good engineers. In order to be approved, it has to have very good engineers. It's checked all the time and rechecked and rechecked. All the things check out in your mind. So on the checklist, everything intellectually makes sense. But what makes that last stamp of approval that you actually get on the airplane? You have 99% chance that you can prove from sound logic. But what's that last 1% that actually puts you on the plane? and makes you feel at ease is faith, is a faith. Everyone right now, at this very moment, is having faith. Can anyone say for 100% certainty that this roof is not going to cave in right now? I hope it doesn't. Right? We don't have very good insurance over here. But no one could say 100% that the roof's not going to cave in right now. We could say 99%. Again, the building had inspectors. Plantation code enforcement is extremely strict. So we can say 99.9999% that the roof is not going to cave in right now. Intellectually sound, everything's good. What gives you the sense of security that you don't even think about that? Doesn't even occur to you that the possibility would even happen? Is a drop of faith. There's always risks. Every time a person gets into a car, there's a risk. Now, there's accidents that happen every day. Every single day there's accidents, even fatal ones. Yet we drive around like nothing, and we assume that we're going to get to the right place. We have faith that we're going to get to the right place. And it's true, 99.999% chance we will. But why don't we focus on that last bit of faith? Why don't I demand 100% faith? Why don't I demand absolute proof before I do anything else in life? Why only when it comes to God? Why only when it comes to the spiritual? In fact, can any of you even prove your parents? Who your parents are? So you're going to say, oh, well, they have DNA testing. DNA, of course. Yeah, you're right. So how do you know? How can you guarantee that the person who's taking your DNA test, they take your blood test, how do you know they're not in cahoots with your parents? They paid them off, Just tell them, sweep it all under the rug. How do you know? You don't know. You say you look just like them. A lot of people look like each other. So you can be, again, 99.99% sure, but that last bit is reliance on faith. It's a small drop of faith, but it's faith. And what's interesting, if you think about it, that's how conspiracy theories form. Because nothing can ever be proven 100%. So what a conspiracy theory does is it takes that little bit that is meant to be taken on faith, and it tries to make a whole plan out of it. Yeah, they are in cahoots. Your mom and the DNA tester, she went to NYU. The DNA tester went to NYU. I don't know. Could be something up over there. So that's the idea. Everything that we do in life requires a little bit of faith. In fact, to take it a step further, a lot of things that we do in life, we do on blind faith. It doesn't have to be intellectually sound before we do it. As soon as the weatherman says it's going to rain, we pack an umbrella, or we dress, or we at least think, what am I going to do? It's raining. Even though we know the weatherman's wrong every day, we still believe it. As soon as they come out with any new study, we jump on the bandwagon without investing any kind of study in it. We trust, and this is normal, this is fine. But I'm saying we don't require absolute proof. Well, if they say vitamin E cures balding, vitamin E is going to help my balding, well, pass the trail mix then, I'm going to need it soon, Let me ask anyone in this room, are eggs good for you? I don't know, it depends on the year. This year maybe they're good. Last year were they good? I don't know. So when they're good, oh, bring on the eggs, yeah. Scrambled, over easy, give me everything. Then they come out and say, eggs are no good for you. Oh, get those eggs away from me, I don't want to see a chicken. So we do things, so everything we do is based on at least a little bit of faith. And a lot of things we do are based on a lot of faith, blind faith even. Certain things we know not through personal experience, but we know them through their effects. Take electricity, for example. We don't see electricity. we see, let's say on the light, we see the filament of the light bulb shining. Okay? We see a meter, one of those meters that measure the electric charge. We see it waving. We don't see the electricity, we want to experience it. There's a lot of things that we don't have interaction with, and unless we have the proper tool to receive the signal, we'd have no clue that it existed at all. Right through this room right now, there are radio waves, there are internet, there's a wireless signal going through this room, there are television waves. There's all sorts of things in this room. There's cell phone waves. Unless a person has the tool that picks up on them, the person is completely unaware. Unless you have a cell phone, you have no idea. Is there reception in here? I don't know. Take out your cell phone. Okay. So sometimes, in order to appreciate something, the vessel has to be there that can receive it. And it works a similar way in our life. A person has to be a vessel, so to speak, open to the idea of God or a higher being. If a person is closed to it, then all the proofs in the world are not going to do anything. Someone who has a phobia of flying. You could give them all the facts, all the statistics. You can introduce them to the pilot. You can introduce them to the security. You can introduce them to everybody. You could show them every intellectual, rationally sound argument, and it will not change them. They are not getting on that plane. It is not happening. Sorry, Charlie. They're lacking a little bit of faith. They're not open to the idea. So in Judaism, our belief in God is not necessarily something that is just blind faith, on whimsical faith, hopes and dreams, but is based on some very rational ideas. What are some of those rational ideas? We'll find out next time.